It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I have another amazing and incredibly inspirational woman to introduce you to today. Cathy Thorpe is the CEO of Nurse Next Door. She has transformed the senior home care industry. Under her guidance, the company has expanded over 300 franchise locations spanning North America, England, Australia, with ongoing plans for global expansion. Now let's talk about Cathy. Cathy's innovative leadership approach, rooted in her philosophy of bold kindness, emphasizes the importance of respecting, valuing, and empowering team members, ultimately leading to thrive culture and business growth. She could share more about her new book, Bold Kindness, a caring, more compassionate way to lead, that's now in bookstores as well as on Amazon. Listeners, don't panic. Everything's going to be in the show notes. More importantly, Cathy, thank you and welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So share a little bit about your background in getting involved in Nurse Next Door. Nurse Next Door has been around for how long?
Nurse Next Door has been around for 22 years. And yeah,
Nice.
It was started in Vancouver, Canada. And we're now across North America, in Australia, England, and looking at other countries as we speak. And how did I get started? I knew one of the founders, and I was living in Germany at the time. And he called me up and said, we're looking for a president. Would you be interested? I said, absolutely. I have not looked back. It's been 10 fast years. And it's just been awesome. You get to make an impact in people's lives every single day. And it's a very purpose-driven organization that, it just gets in your heart and it stays there.
So tell me a little bit about what Nurse Next Door does. I mean, it sounds like, oh yeah, I have to get this, but I always like to know really, how does this organization, who are the clients, how does it impact the people that it serves?
Yeah, so, we do anything in the home. We start with, if someone needs just that support for perhaps going for a walk, we do 3 hours, 3 times a week. That's what we start with. And so it's sometimes those basic small things that people can't do anymore. And we come in and support that person to be able to go and do those things. And then, the ebbs and flows of life. And, we do everything in between and including end of life. A lot of people want to come home and they want that to be the place where they pass away. And so we do a lot of that in this business also.
How have you, obviously this is a global need.
Yes.
Okay. Is this mostly with aging, or do you see this in other areas?
The majority of our business is aging, but obviously, many different ages need support when they have certain disabilities. And so we certainly have that as part of our business, but the focus really is on senior care.
In leading this organization for the last 10 years, what have you learned from it as a woman leader?
Yeah, I would say that there's a level of vulnerability to doing what we do. It's a very intimate relationship that we have with the clients. And I think it's allowed me to, I think that I had those feelings throughout my career of wanting to be that leader that really represented a caring heart all the time and bring that kindness to work. And I think that this environment has really brought that out of me and allowed for it to thrive and really, bring that bold kindness into the culture and create something that I think is quite beautiful.
So you're leading me right too. So what drove you? Okay, you're a busy woman. You're running a global organization. You're a mom, with 2 kids, if I recall. Then there's writing a book. That's another whole major commitment. What drove you to write Bold Kindness?
Yeah, I think it's the quest of, it's like, how do you create this culture of people development so people are getting feedback on how they can grow and really thrive and do things in their career that that they want to do. And on the other side, to be able to do that in an environment where you get to bring your whole self to work, you get to be human. We talk about bold dreams and goals here, and it's like, what are your dreams and goals, and how do you help people, how do you support people to do those things also, and really find that kindness and bring that kindness into the culture where people can thrive. And we talk too about, we want to work with self-led people. We're all adults, and we don't really need to be told what to do. And how do you allow people to really thrive and use their brain and get to make decisions and help the organization grow?
So, what do you do for your people in leadership development and to bring your culture forward?
Yeah, I'd say I'm going to go back to, the concept of being self-led. And, when you're self-led, you want to come to work, you want to have an area that you get to own. And when you get to own that area and work with others around you to really see opportunities for the business and be able to go and make those things happen, that's where you learn and grow and get to experience things that allow you to challenge your leadership skills, challenge all of those things that you want to develop. It's really about looking at yourself internally and figuring out what you need to work on. That's where I think we've seen the success. And over 60% of our roles are filled with internally developed people, because they've taken that ownership of the role they're in, and then they want to go and do more in this organization. So that's been very fun to watch happen.
I mean, I agree with you 100% from my heart. I think the internal development and people who put time into ourselves to continue to grow and develop and learn and be the best we can be, to be the highest consciousness we could be.
Exactly. Yes.
It is a win-win for every person we touch.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you have to have that. You have to be a learner, right? We have to have a curiosity for like learning and growing and wanting to do better and to take chances and to go after things that might be a little bit scary, but doing it anyway and just seeing how much you can grow from those moments. And yeah, it's pretty awesome to be able to give people that opportunity to do those things.
I will always say, and I've said this before, I don't think I've ever said this on the show, but we'll see. For myself, speaking from a place of for myself, when I stop wanting to learn, when I stop wanting to develop, when I stop wanting to grow for myself, for Ivy, is the day that I will lay down and be done.
Mm.
Because that's the day that everything else stops around me, that I know no longer am present, that I no longer want to live a full life. And that's I think is a key to it.
It is, isn't it? It's yeah, it keeps the juices flowing. It keeps you excited. It keeps you feeling like it keeps you young.
Oh yes, I touche. Nail, you hit the nail on the head. It keeps us young.
Yeah,
it keeps us young. It keeps us in tune to things.
Yeah, and it gives you a humility in that you realize that you just have to keep learning and growing, and having that mindset of continuous improvement with yourself really creates, I don't know, beautiful things come out of that.
I cannot agree more. On the other side of things, how are your life transforming with your kids growing up? Do you travel a lot for work?
Yeah, I do travel. I'd say I traveled a lot more before COVID. And I think, some of the things that we learned through COVID is, doing what's necessary, right? Like, don't do something because you think you have to do it because it's important to do. So I would say that I'm very thoughtful now with when I do travel, and I do want to have, that, the work life and my life, and I want to have a great balance with all of it.
How do you find balance for yourself? I think that balance is precarious.
Yeah, I think for me, balance is, you have to make it a priority, and you have to, I think it's this weaving all aspects of your life together. And as an example, you know, if my daughter needs me at home at 3:30 because that's when she gets home, then I go and do that. And I probably wouldn't have done that a few years ago. And now it's just, no, like that's how we have to weave all of this together. And, in those moments, you are there for your family, and you have that much more energy and strength to come to work because you can ebb and flow and weave all of those things together.
I agree. I know that, I'm always very careful using the word balance. I think sometimes balance is the seesaw, right? And you have two kids and they're trying to balance, right? That piece, and you almost hold your breath. And for me, in raising two kids, they're both married, expecting our first grandchild. And, my daughter is, talking to me. I was like, okay, so let's like plan this time and go have lunch. She goes, well, I'm going to take off work. I'm going to stop working at this point. But what about you? She's like, I said, that's the priority in that moment, right? For what you're saying, I've always been about the priorities are moving and changing all the time. And it's a matter of, I move through that seesaw and enjoy the movement as opposed to trying to keep it perfectly steady, and enjoy where I am. When I'm 100% engrossed to my business, I'm enjoying it. When I'm in pause there and move into doing things and take that break, whether it's just lunch or hey mom, after work, I want an organization session. I gotta get it right. We're there. It's deciding what the highest priorities are at different moments in a day, a week, a month, and a year.
That's very well said. And I think, as you're saying all of that, I'm like, oh, right. I used to think more 9 to 5, right? Like it's the way you were raised. It's the way I started my career. And I think that COVID really blew all of that up. And
COVID definitely blew it up. And I think in a very much for the better for many of us.
Oh, it allows you to see, oh, I did it that way, but I'm doing it this way now and it's still working. And so how do you get to figure out what the next version looks like? Because you just realize that just because you did it that way doesn't mean it needs to continue that way.
Right. I think COVID was a great catalyst because it forced us very quickly to adapt new things. And we very often are very slow to adapting new methods and methodology. When it pushed us, it didn't just push us onto Zoom or Teams or whatever it is quickly, right? It pushed us to thinking differently. Like, okay, if I adapted this quickly, what else am I set in a routine that I could look at in a new, fresh perspective?
Yeah, and I think COVID also pushed the boundaries of leadership. And I think people really are asking for a different style of leadership. They want to come to the workplace and feel awesome and have space and independence. And I think that COVID really allowed for a lot of that stuff to happen also. So I think it's an exciting time, I think, for leadership and business, because I think we're blowing the doors open on what's possible.
I agree 1,000%. What has surprised, as leading this company in the last 10 years, what has surprised you?
Just how people can thrive when they're given space, and you know, stop telling people what to do, and they do incredible things.
When people are given the leeway to take initiative and encouraged to, what can
Yeah,
happen is what I'm hearing.
yeah. I'm astonished by what can happen, and just that level of care about the organization that people have and what they will do for the organization, because they're invested in it and they are engaged in it. They're engaged in coming to work. They're excited to come to work. And that's awesome.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about the book.
Sure.
Because I first of all, the name really struck me, Bold Kindness. A caring, more compassionate way to lead. When I saw the title, it truly touched my heart because so often leaders aren't talking about leading through kindness. They talk very much about leading through authenticity, but they don't talk about kindness. And to me, great leadership is very much about listening versus speaking. And I, so when I saw Bold Kindness, I was like, oh, right, somebody else who gets listening to people was my first instinct. But that's not, I'm curious to know where you came from. What drove you here?
You know, I I think that so much of my career, you saw bold leadership, in people giving feedback and, telling people what their job performance looks like. And I think for me, that whole piece of kindness is really about being in a relationship with that person. You have to know the people that you have around you. You have to know them as, what are their bold dreams and goals? What do they want to accomplish with their life? When you can come from giving feedback and be in that place, I think beautiful things happen because that person knows that you have care and that you really do have their best interests at heart. And I think that, yeah, I do look at it as relationships.
I agree. I think, I've said for years and years and years that relationships are truly the golden nugget in business and in life. And it transcends back to life and business. It's if it's the personal life, it's the business life, it's the interaction, it's who we know, who knows, and the relationships we build are what we take forward that has the importance and the value for long term.
Yeah, and people want to come to work when they're in relationships. It's pretty awesome, and it creates an environment where people you can thrive when you have your tribe around you, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I want to ask if one tip, one piece of advice for our listeners who might be tuning into this as they are building their careers, building their businesses, building their leadership, what would that be to pass forward?
Yeah. So there's lots of things, but what comes to mind is, hire people that are better than you. Know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and be real about it. And find great people that can support your weaknesses and get out of their way. They're better than you, so don't tell them what to do, right? Because you hired them to do something that you actually can't do. And so step into that place. And, if it feels uncomfortable, I think that's when it's working.
So true. So true. When we are, our greatest growth is from when we're feeling uncomfortable, we know we're at a growth place.
Right. Yes. And I'd also add that, I unapologetically only work with great people. And I think when you surround yourself with great people, you're able to give them the space to really go and make decisions and create something that is very beautiful.
I agree wholeheartedly. Cathy, share with our listeners how they could learn more about you. I know your book is on Amazon and in bookstores now, Bold Kindness, but how could they learn more about you and learn more about Nurse Next Door?
Check out our website. I also have, I've done some podcasts myself. It's called How to Care. Look those up. There's many different topics that we've covered over the last 3 years. And yeah, those are two great places to start.
Wonderful. Well, Cathy, thank you so much for joining me today on Her Success Story.
And thank you for having me. This has been great.
And listeners, this is always what I say as we close out the show for this week. Take a moment and take a breath. Think what in the conversation Cathy and I had together was meaningful, insightful to you. What can you do with that? Create an intention, write it down, and see that you are fulfilling and taking the actions to move yourself forward, your careers forward, your businesses forward, and your life forward. Thank you again. See you next time on Her Success Story.
Don't need your approval anymore, 'cause I've got mine.